For example, Hue Khai Kheng right now, we are the biggest home of Indo-Chinese tiger population.
I'm Jumana Karachi in Istanbul, and this is CNN.
Hello, everyone. I'm Allison Cossack in New York. I'm sitting in for Bianca Nobilo. Welcome to The Brief. Tonight, a devastating earthquake in eastern Afghanistan kills more than 1,000 people. It is the deadliest earthquake to strike the country in 20 years. And Russian troops renew their assault on Ukraine's second biggest city, Kharkiv. Then, Saudi Arabia's crown prince has visited Turkey for the first time since journalist Jamal Khashoggi was murdered in Istanbul. We begin with a humanitarian tragedy in Afghanistan. More than 1,000 people have been killed and more than 1,500 have been injured by a massive earthquake. It struck eastern Afghanistan overnight, destroying countless homes, ripping apart entire villages, and pushing a country already in desperate need of aid further toward the brink. The UN and other international groups are sending help, but weather conditions are complicating the search and rescue efforts. As usual, it's the most vulnerable citizens who are suffering the worst.
Afghanistan has long been one of the hardest, toughest places to be a child in the world. Right now, we've got 24 million people in urgent need of humanitarian aid. 13 million are children. We've got the worst drought the country's experienced for 37 years. We've got a chronic malnutrition crisis and 1 million children under the age of 5 at risk of death without urgent treatment. We've got preventable diseases such as measles and acute watery diarrhea spreading across the country. And then on top of that, we've got economic collapse. You've got 97% of the population on the brink of poverty, people not able to feed themselves, high unemployment, high food prices. Afghan people do not have their troubles to seek, and this earthquake, as you say, has compounded an already miserable situation.
Scott McLean brings us the latest. A warning, some of the images in his report are graphic.
This is the sound of help arriving in Afghanistan's Paktika province. Overnight, the extremely remote area was struck by a magnitude 5.9 earthquake. Destroyed buildings and killed more than 1,000 people, the deadliest quake in more than 2 decades. In one village, a group of men searching for survivors pulled out a lifeless body instead. Elsewhere, this man lifts the shrouds of the latest victims. These people died in the earthquake, he says, and 33 members of one family were killed. The epicenter was a sparsely populated area along the border with Pakistan and an active fault line about 100 miles south of Kabul. The kids and I screamed, this woman says. One of our rooms was destroyed. We heard our neighbors screaming. Taliban trucks moved bodies out of the area. Some homes were badly damaged. The government says some entire villages were destroyed, and that's just what they know about so far.
Some communities are not accessible. There's a lot of rain here in Afghanistan at the moment, so we've had landslides and there's a lot of mud. And of course, because these areas that are affected are so rural and remote, there's no sophisticated equipment there.
The man shooting this video says that one of his grandchildren was buried in the rubble, but they managed to pull them out alive. Foreign aid organizations say they are already on the ground, but the head of one local NGO says that the Taliban-led search and rescue effort is desperately under-resourced.
There probably weren't more helicopters to send out because when the United States was leaving, it disabled most of the aircraft, whether it belonged to Afghan forces or to them. So it's just that we constantly keep dealing in absolutes, in right and wrong and black and white, and the world isn't like that.
At a press conference, the Taliban pledged to send more than $500 to those injured and more than 1,000 to the families of those killed. A bold pledge for a cash-strapped government in the midst of an economic crisis, unable to feed even its own people. Scott McLean, CNN, London.
The governor of Ukraine's Luhansk region says Russia is unleashing hell on the last remaining areas still under Ukrainian control. He says Russian forces are destroying everything in Lysychansk, attacking the city with tanks, artillery, and aircraft as they approach from the south, seizing villages along the way. Russia is also tightening its grip on nearby Severodonetsk. Ukrainian defenders are concentrated in a chemical plant on the city's outskirts. Hundreds of civilians are holed up there as well. And in the northeast, Russian forces are intensifying attacks on Kharkiv. Ukraine says Russia is trying to terrorize the population. I want to bring in CNN's Sam Kiley. He's live for us in Kharkiv. Sam, good to see you. I'm wondering if Russia's recent progress in the east, is that now encouraging kind of a focus back to Kharkiv, which is Ukraine's second biggest city and a very important economic center?
Well, Alison, I don't know that it's the success, so-called, of the Russians in the east, which has been grinding and extremely costly for them. They have been advancing south of Lysychansk, as you rightly report, there and surrounding Severodonetsk, but they've been trying to make progress there for some time, and that is because the Ukrainians pushed their way out of Kharkiv here and drove the Russian invaders back. Now, that absorbed a good deal of Russian manpower. That now seems to be being reinforced, and there has been a very substantial and significant intensification of airstrikes and missile strikes in and around Kharkiv in the last 48 hours. 15 people killed in the region yesterday, 10 so far today. This evening I've heard at least 8 pretty loud detonations of missiles fired from Russian territory, very close to the Russian border. And this is because, in the view of Ukrainian officials and intelligence analysts that I spoke to, there is a planned attack coming from the Russians. This is how they were speaking.
Prayers on return to her bombed-out home.
I hope and believe with all my heart that light will conquer darkness, that peace will triumph over evil.
It's a distant prospect because here, Ukrainians say that Russian forces are massing for a new assault on their hometown. She fled the last Russian attacks in April, when this area, Saltivka, bore the brunt.
Thousands of people were driven from their homes in this northeastern suburb of Kharkiv. Hundreds across the city were killed in missile strikes that did this kind of damage to whole apartment blocks. The remains of some of those missiles are still scattered in the rubble here, and it still smells of death.
Kharkiv is under constant and intensified shelling, ending a lull after Russian forces were driven back several weeks ago. This college dorm was hit on a day when 15 people were killed in and around the city. On the front line, it's easy to see why Russia calls one of its rocket systems Grad. It means hail. Many Ukrainian fighters raise private funds to buy civilian drones. It spots a Russian soldier who hears the tiny aircraft and shows potentially fatal curiosity. Less than 100 yards sometimes separates the enemies on the outskirts of Kharkiv's north. Ukrainian forces call conventional trench warfare like this the meat grinder.
It's really helpful.
Lockie's been fighting in those same dugouts.
The main disadvantage, and everyone knows it, and it's the only one that I will tell, is the numbers, the raw numbers. There are just too many of the forces and stuff.
You can see the
Ukrainian intelligence officers' forecast for Kharkiv is a new threat of hail.
On this picture you actually can see well-hidden vehicles, and they are placing them almost on forests. We have firing positions of 2 self-propelled artillery and the fire and control unit right here. They actually tell us that they are going to prepare another invasion of Kharkiv.
Do you have an estimate of when that might happen?
I can't be 100% sure, but I am kind of confident, so in nearest week, I would say.
This is proving to be a long war. Prayer, often the last line of defense.
Now, Alison, the steady increase in the amount of attacks against civilian areas, but also military areas in and around the Kharkiv area, does inevitably presage what those drone images and intelligence contacts here, but also the central government in Kiev of saying, which is that they expect a significant Russian push back against Kharkiv, perhaps not necessarily to try and take it entirely, but to absorb yet more Ukrainian personnel and try to press home those incremental advantages that they've had further east. Alison.
All right, Sam Carley, please be safe where you are. Thanks for your reporting. Germany says it might begin training Ukrainian soldiers on a long-range rocket system as soon as next week. After that training in Germany is over, Ukraine could then begin receiving those badly needed weapons. Ben Wiedemann explains how a more advanced arsenal could help Ukraine turn the tide of the war.
New rounds soon to be loaded into the breach. These Ukrainian troops wait for the order.
They're preparing to fire this gun. Ukraine has received more than 100 M777 howitzers, but we've seen steadily the Russians are gaining more and more ground. This helps, but it may not be enough.
With sophisticated U.S.-made and supplied 155mm howitzers like this, Ukraine hopes to counter Russia's massive superiority in firepower. That superiority has allowed Russian forces to push forward, subjecting cities like Severodonetsk and Lysychansk to intense bombardment. This drone footage shows Russian tanks entering the town of Toshkivka, just outside Severodonetsk. Outnumbered and outgunned in the east, Ukraine is warned Russian forces may soon intensify their attack. This artillery is firing rounds with a range of around 20 kilometers or 12.5 miles. The target, we're told, Russian armored personnel carriers. Thanks to the Americans, I think we can win this war, says Bogdan. The only problem is we need more barrels, more artillery, and more ammunition. Or in plain English,
we need your help.
Enough weapons to fight. His comrade Grach puts a number to it. Weapons to win. We need at least 500 of these guns, he says. This has become an artillery war, and victory in this war will come from the barrel of a gun. Ben Wiedemann, CNN, Eastern Ukraine.
EU leaders are set to review an executive proposal this week that could make Ukraine an official candidate for European Union membership. And just ahead of the summit, the European Commission president says the former Soviet republic deserves the candidate status.
Our opinion stems from a careful and thorough assessment on the reality on the ground. And this evidence tells us that Ukraine, the opinion of the Commission, deserves a European perspective. It deserves the candidate status, of course on the understanding that the country will carry out a number of further important reforms.
But even if the 27 leaders endorse Ukraine's candidacy, Kyiv would likely take years to become a member. Coming up after the break, Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince and Turkey's president have met in Ankara for the first time since Jamal Khashoggi's murder. We'll look at why they are now attempting to reconcile. Plus, Prince Charles and his wife Camilla are attending a summit in Rwanda, an historic trip for the British royal family.
We share this place, we all belong. We have to restore this planet's soul. Teach it something more than what we know. Give it water, give it sun, room to grow. I can see a better tomorrow. I can see a better tomorrow.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson. here, changing, fighting, creating, connecting. That's why we're here. We live here, we work here, we're from here, and we'll go wherever the story takes us.
I'm Becky Anderson in Tehran. We are in Jerusalem.
Real news that shapes our world. Exploring not just what's going on, but why.
I just want to press you on one further point.
Getting perspective on this region from this region. Places that many of us know, but few of us get to see. Observing countries on the move, still rooted in tradition. It all starts here, and that's why we're here, bringing you the world from our Middle Eastern hub.
Connect the World with Becky Anderson, Monday through Friday on CNN.
Russian President Vladimir Putin is pushing for stronger trade ties with China, Brazil, India, and South Africa. Addressing the virtual BRICS summit, Mr. Putin said Russia is rerouting its trade and oil exports to, quote, reliable international partners. Russia faces sweeping Western sanctions for invading Ukraine. Chinese President Xi Jinping accused the West of weaponizing the global economy. CNN's Selena Wang has more now on the BRICS summit and what China and Russia's leaders are saying.
At the keynote speech for the BRICS summit, hosted by Beijing, Chinese President Xi Jinping called sanctions on Russia a double-edged sword. He said at the virtual summit, quote, facts have proven time again that sanctions are a boomerang and a double-edged sword, politicizing, instrumentalizing, and weaponizing the world economy, adding that sanctions take advantage of the international financial system to bring harm to the people of the world. Now, China claims it's not taking sides in the conflict, but China does not call it an invasion, and China, along with other BRICS leaders, have avoided outright condemning Russia. The BRICS summit is Putin's first forum with the heads of major economies since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It is a virtual forum, but still, seeing Putin's face on screen alongside the leaders of China, India, Brazil, and South Africa, well, it sends the signal that Russia is not alone, that Russia is not a pariah to every country. Putin's invasion does, however, throw another complication into this relationship. BRICS has already long struggled with mistrust and conflicting geopolitical interests among members. China has tried to portray BRICS as an alternative to the G7, as a leader for the developing world. Ever since its inception, BRICS has been calling for more representation of major economies on the world stage, pushing back against what it sees as disproportionate dominance of Western powers. BRICS countries comprise more than 40% of the world's population, about a quarter of the world's GDP. Also likely to be a discussion point at the summit is about how BRICS countries can settle trade in their own currencies outside the US dollar system. That's added relevance after Western sanctions on Russia. Russia is also China's largest supplier of oil. It is a major supplier of arms to India. Just days after this summit, the G7 meeting, which has been united in their voice against Russia, will be kicking off. Selena Wang, CNN, Beijing.
The Saudi Crown Prince has visited Turkey for the first time since the 2018 murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. Mohammed bin Salman met with Turkish President Erdogan in Ankara after visits to Egypt and Jordan this week. The meeting came as the West and other Middle East countries look to repair relations with Saudi Arabia, which have been strained since Khashoggi's murder. But President Erdogan is looking for a financial boost to help Turkey's struggling economy and seemed to be turning the page on the scandal. Let's bring in CNN correspondent Atika Schubert. She's live for us in Istanbul, who's been covering the Crown Prince's trip. Atika, good to see you. You know, there was so much outrage, you know, after the murder of Mr. Khashoggi. A meeting like this, back then, if they were thinking that this was going to happen, it really was unthinkable. But it happened. So does this mean all has been forgiven in the name of economic interests?
Well, perhaps not that all is forgiven, but that even a heinous crime can be conveniently ignored in the name of national interests. Certainly, it was a win for Saudi's Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman. Just the picture of him being welcomed to Turkey by Turkish President Recep Erdogan is really an astonishing thing, and it really goes a long way to rehabilitating the international image of the Crown Prince. There was a lot of pomp and ceremony when he arrived. He was literally embraced by Erdogan. So right there, the Saudi Crown Prince has achieved what he set out to do. What's not clear is what Turkey got out of this. You're absolutely right. Erdogan needs financial help. He is facing an election in exactly 1 year's time, and he is struggling to contain both an inflation crisis and a currency crisis. The inflation here has skyrocketed to 73%, more than 73%, and the currency has plummeted, losing nearly a quarter of its value. So what Turkey really needs is help in replenishing its foreign exchange reserves in order to prop up the Turkish lira, the local currency, and Saudi could certainly help with that. We've seen other neighbors in the region helping out, such as the UAE announced a $5 billion swap deal with Turkey in January. So it's quite likely that something similar was discussed at the meeting, and perhaps President Erdogan hoped for some sort of an agreement on that. But it doesn't seem like any concrete agreement was announced today. The leaders met for 2 hours. They discussed quite a few things, but we didn't see any statement coming from both leaders. What we got instead was a joint statement from the foreign ministers of both countries that promised to deepen ties but fell short of any specific deals or agreements. In fact, the state dinner that both leaders were attending wrapped up in under an hour, and the Crown Prince was quickly whisked off to his next meeting. So it's unclear at this point just how much Turkey gained from such a controversial visit as this, Allison.
Okay, CNN's Atika Schubert live for us from Istanbul. Thanks for your reporting. Let's take a look at other key stories making international headlines today. Protests on the streets of Ecuador. Indigenous demonstrators angry at rising food and fuel prices clashed with riot police in Quito. They want fuel price cuts, a halt to expanding oil and mining production, and improved healthcare services. Since the protests began a week ago, major roads into the capital have been blocked. Thousands of farmers gathered near Amsterdam today, many arriving by tractor. They're protesting the Dutch government's plan to curb emissions of nitrogen oxide from farm animal manure. The government also wants to reduce ammonia use for fertilization. Farmers say they would have to get rid of much of their livestock and could face economic ruin. The British Prime Minister is set to leave for Rwanda in the coming hours to attend a Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. The UK struck a controversial deal with the East African country to send asylum seekers there. But Britain's first planned deportation flight, that was blocked last week. The European Court of Human Rights issued a set of rulings just minutes before takeoff. Boris Johnson mentioned this agreement before heading to the meeting. Listen.
When it comes to the Rwanda policy that we are pursuing, that policy, Mr. Speaker, has not been ruled unlawful by any UK court, nor so far by any international court, Mr. Speaker. And we will continue with that policy.
Prince Charles is also in Rwanda to attend that summit, the first time a British royal has visited the country. He and his wife Camilla met with Rwandan President Paul Kagame a short while ago, as well as survivors of the Rwandan genocide. Hundreds of thousands of ethnic Tutsis were slaughtered by Hutu extremists in 1994 during the Rwandan Civil War. Back in the UK, Prime Minister Boris Johnson's leadership is being tested again. After surviving a vote by his own party to remove him earlier this month, it's now the public's turn to have their say. CNN's Bianca Nobilo has more.
A world away from Westminster, Boris Johnson's political future hangs in the balance, determined by two small elections triggered by sex scandals. But the real issue may be whether his election-winning personality is now a liability. The first, in Wakefield, a cathedral city in northern England, was called to replace a member of Parliament from Johnson's Conservative Party who was convicted for sexually assaulting a teenage boy. The second, Tiverton and Honington, will see voters heading to polls in the bucolic farmlands of southwest England. There's a history of battles here. This time, it's political. The by-election is happening here because local Conservative MP Neil Parish was caught watching pornography in Parliament. Not once, but twice. But he said he was looking for tractors. If Boris Johnson loses one or both of these elections, it will show that he's no longer in the driving seat. His position as Prime Minister even less tenable, and his own MPs will be looking for ways to hasten his political demise. And now the Prime Minister's unpopularity is their problem.
This MP of ours going in that way, and the one in Wakefield going the same way over sort of sleazy matters, you kind of get the feeling that it's drip drip from the top. I mean, he's shallow, he's self-serving, he's a serial liar. Masses of his own MPs are disgusted with him.
Boris Johnson needs to look at the party that he is leading, and that is coming from the top. If it's okay for him to lie, then it's all right for that to filter down to his MPs as well.
But the damage, these voters say, goes deeper.
Trump was shameful for America, and Boris is shameful for us.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I've always been very proud of being British, and I'm starting to feel less proud of actually the country I come from.
Johnson, once a glittering election winner, Brexit deliverer, star of the show, now airbrushed out of his own party's political campaign.
I think the Prime Minister is a complete liability for the Conservative Party. He just can't get it right. And unfortunately, he just can't see it.
There's a really good understanding here amongst our sort of astute voters in our community that we can send a message on behalf of all those people who don't have the opportunity to vote on Thursday.
That message could be that Boris Johnson's once winning political formula has become toxic. Bianca Nobilo, CNN, London.
That's your Global Brief. Thanks for watching. I'm Alison Kosik. If you want to follow me, I'm on Instagram and Twitter at Alison Kosik. I'll see you soon.
We're here at the home of one of the FSB team. Was it your team that poisoned Navalny?
What do you want the world to know?
People are so exhausted. Just gonna help her carry this bag.
Scores of Taliban fighters, and just behind us, the U.S. Embassy. I'm the one who has to look them in the eye. Can I have your word? These people are depending on you. Now they're pressing in. They want desperately to tell their stories.
Mission here at CNN. The news comes first.
More breaking news that we are following right now. Welcome to the Situation Room. We have breaking
news. Business is all about making connections. But some connections are easier to make than others. With a CNN partner hotel, the world is always at your fingertips. CNN partner hotels. Connected to your world.
I'm Bill Weir in Greenland, and this is CNN.
As Brooks Koepka officially joins the LIV Golf Series, the PGA Tour lays out their plan to stop more defections. And Serena Williams wins again as she continues to ramp up for her return to Wimbledon. Welcome to World Sport. I'm Andy Scholes in New York. It has certainly been a wild few weeks for golf. Brooks Koepka making it official on Wednesday, leaving the PGA Tour for the LIV Golf Series. The four-time major winner now gives the Saudi-backed series 8 of the top 50 players in the world. As the PGA Tour desperately tries to stop the bleeding, Commissioner Jay Monahan met with the players Tuesday ahead of the Travelers Championship. And on Wednesday, he laid out the tour's plans for how they will compete with LIV moving forward. But Monahan made it clear, if money is all that matters, the PGA Tour can't compete.
Let me be clear. I am not naive. If this is an arms race, and if the only weapons here are dollar bills, the PGA Tour can't compete. The PGA Tour, an American institution, can't compete with a foreign monarchy that is spending billions of dollars in an attempt to buy the game of golf. We welcome good, healthy competition. The LIV Saudi Golf League is not that. It's an irrational threat, one not concerned with the return on investment or true growth of the game.
Here are some of the changes coming to the PGA Tour. They are significantly increasing the purses for 8 current events next season. They're going to go up by about $54 million altogether. Now, starting in 2024, the Tour will also hold a 3-event international series where there will be no cut. And there's also going to be a new playoff structure. Top 70 players in the FedEx standings instead of 125 will qualify for the playoffs. Top 50 at the end of the playoffs will be eligible for the International Series, and those International Series events will have huge purses, upwards of $25 million. The idea, to get as much money, more guaranteed money as they can into the best PGA Tour players' hands. Now, one guy that most certainly will not be leaving the PGA Tour is Rory McIlroy. He's been very critical of the Saudi-backed league from the start, and on Wednesday, he took a shot at the guys who left.
I'm surprised at a lot of these guys because they say one thing and then they do another. And I don't understand that. And I don't know if that's for legal reasons or if they can't. I have no idea. But it's pretty duplicitous on their part to say one thing and then do another thing.
Yeah, and Roy will once again be seeing the players who joined LIV at St. Andrews next month for the Open Championship. The R&A, like the U.S. Open, allowing LIV golfers to compete in the major. Now, earlier I caught up with veteran golf announcer Brian Katrick to get his thoughts on all the changes coming to the PGA Tour and if he thinks it will be enough.
Well, there's no question. The message was, go get as much money as the market can sustain, and as much money as you can possibly get, and put it towards your players. Your players are your stars, and I think the Tour has always understood that. The problem is, it's not even fair to say this isn't a fair fight. Currently, LIV Golf isn't in business to do business. The money is not a fair comparison. They don't have to justify their spending. At no point are they ever going to have to make money at the way it seems right now. So the golf marketplace can only allow for so much spending, and I think the PGA Tour has reached that limit. If they haven't, they've got to be getting close. But LIV Golf is breaking all the rules.
Yeah, and Brooks Koepka, the latest big-time player to make the move. I mean, do you think what they laid out today is good enough? Is it going to stop the bleeding?
I say Live Golf is breaking the rules. You know, that's to the benefit of players like Brooks Koepka that are able to cash in, and those players that, you know, that they feel like they've been underpaid and undervalued. Well, this is exactly what they were looking for. I don't know if it's going to be enough to stop. I really think the next battleground was really where the first battleground was, and that is going to be the battle for world golf ranking points. If the new tour gets them, then the PGA Tour and the European Tour, that now the DP World Tour, they've got a tough road in front of them. But if they don't get them, then that changes things, and I can't wait to see how that unfolds.
Yeah, and Commissioner Monahan was asked about this new money. You know, they're raising a lot of the prize money, and he was asked where did it come from, and if the plan was always to raise the prize money, and he kind of talked around it and said, yeah, it was always the plan. But Brian, do you think some of the players in the PGA Tour are sitting around like, well, where is this money coming from, and why weren't we going to be getting these raises before?
Well, I think they might have been. I think it's a very good question, Andy. Again, we're in year one of a brand new TV contract, so I think that's where a lot of this is coming from. He talks about the reserve. I don't know if that's a good or bad answer in the mind of the players. I'm not one of those guys. There was no question the PGA Tour had to go find some money. Whether they have to go mortgage the future and go figure out how to sell it, hopefully another Tiger comes along or whatever the reality is, then that's what you had to do. But what they announced today, they absolutely had to do.
And the R&A said today that the Live Golf players will be allowed to play at St. Andrews next month. Do you think this is going to be the last time that we see the best players in the world competing against each other? Meaning, do you think the majors are going to change their stance in the coming years?
Yeah, Andy, I think that's a great question, but I don't think it's going to be the last time, no matter what, because it's going to go one way or the other. Either you're going to be able to get world golf ranking points by playing on the Live Tour, in which case we'll still see these guys together at the majors. I don't know that that's great for golf fans to only see them at the majors, but at least we'd see them at the majors. So either they get the points and they can play their way in there, or the Live Tour players don't get the points, in which case I'm not sure how much longer the Live Tour project would actually continue despite unlimited funds, because I think the best players in the world do want to measure themselves at the major championships. And without world golf ranking points, they're not going to do that on that tour. So I really feel like that project would come to a fairly quick end. So the decision rests in the hands of the governing bodies and the world golf rankings at this point.
All right, thanks to Brian Kacher for helping us break all that down. All right, World Sport will be right back.
Hello, good morning. I started kayaking 2 years ago. I'm from Monterrey in the north of Mexico, and this activity is not very common in my city. All the time that I'm inside the mangroves, it's just me and the kayak. It's a very good moment to relax and to stop thinking about other problems and enjoying all this nature that we have. The combination between workout and nature is what makes me disconnect from the city.
On Mission Ahead, a new spin on launching spacecraft into orbit.
As a species, I think we just always look up and we say, well, that's the next frontier.
Then, could this new zero-emission boat be the Tesla of the sea? Plus, preparing for the future, are cities that float the answer?
On water, buildings don't have to be static.
Meet the entrepreneurs and inventors who are taking mobility to the next level.
Mission Ahead, Saturday on CNN, in association with Fujifilm.
Welcome back to World Sport. Well, former French international Patrice Evra says that big institutions will only tackle racism and discrimination when their bottom lines are impacted. In an interview with CNN senior sports analyst Darren Lewis, Evra spoke about how organizations can tackle online hate, but first opened up about his experiences of abuse on the field when he started off his career as a youngster in Italy.
Everybody knows the story of yourself and Luis Suarez, and you talk about it in detail in the book, but I want to go back to when you were a teenager playing in a game at Avellino.
Wow.
And the abuse you suffered as a teenager. Tell us about that.
But that's why when we talk about racism, at the age of 17, when I was playing in Italy, I was the only black player in whole league. So people were throwing banana on me. People were doing the monkey nose every time I caught the ball. It was a player, before we start the game, he say, listen to me, my little, and use the N-word. Today, it's nothing for you. You know, everyone say you're a phenomenon, but I'm going to break your legs. And after 20 minutes of the game, I'm glad I had my shin pad. I had a massive scar. He did like a tackle, and he get only a yellow card. And I went to the hospital. I had like few stitches. And I remember after the game, we lost the game, and the football director the next day said, we lost the game because of you, because you give up, you let us down. And that's, you know, that's my story. So, but, you know, we all different. Some people, when they get abused, you know, they can hide themselves. Or me, it was make me even feeling more stronger. I was like doing the monkey nose. But you will see when I get the ball, I'm going to punish you.
You talked about wanting to do something around racism.
Yeah.
When you see these kids now, teenagers, still receiving abuse, what goes through your mind?
I think, you know, I support all the campaign when they say no to racism. And I will always support someone who wants to change things. First of all, the problem is not only in football, it's the society. Like I talk, it's about education. No any baby born as a racist person. But if we educate them, and that's why it's really important what we're doing, like even the player taking the knee. But when the player taking the knee, they get booed. The real, like we say, we have to stop acting, pretending. We have to do something, you know, and silence is a crime. And those big organizations, when you touch their pocket economically, like the example for the Super League, a project didn't even see the light. We stop it in 24 hours. So don't tell me we can't do nothing about the racism. And also, the racism now is spreading online. But when it's about the COVID, you get flagged straight away. So don't tell me we can't. Why we don't do the same things for the racism? Because you don't kill the business. So, solution, you know, I'm not God, I'm just myself, but it's about education. It's about also, I don't believe in punishment, but we need to do something where we can stop the business. Because when you're going to stop the business, those big, you know, institutions, they will do something.
Well, Kylian Mbappe, well, we saw in the Champions League, he and his teammates walked off when they believed there'd been an incident of racist abuse. And if you're talking about stopping the pockets, then is that the thing to do?
It's one of them. It's one of them. Everyone have to be unit. Not only the black players, the coach, the club, the owners. It's easy to talk, but action. We need action because enough is enough. But the problem is, you know, you need to be also courageous, you know, to do those kind of things. Some players also, they will say like, oh, you know, if I don't play, I won't get my salary this month. So that's why all the ex-retired players, they can talk about it like really easily. Me, I could deal with it personally. But now I would like to help people. So that's why I would like to find solution to stop it.
All right, elsewhere in football, Sadio Mane is now officially a Bayern Munich player. The 30-year-old has made the move from Liverpool to Germany on a 3-year deal, saying this is the right time for this challenge. Mane leaves Anfield after 6 years in which he's helped them to the Champions League and Premier League titles. He scored 120 goals in 269 games. All right, can Serena win Wimbledon? We'll break down her chances coming up.
Three Strands Global Foundation is a nonprofit that has been combating human trafficking for the last 12 years, focused in on three areas: prevention education, prevention through employment, and prevention through engagement. So we have a few initiatives that directly look at the root causes. One is prevention education, so that teachers can identify exploitation and trafficking, as well as be trauma-informed, and students in kindergarten all the way through 12th grade can be educated. When the pandemic hit, our prevention education program, Protect, we had to do a pivot. The kids no longer were in classrooms. Teachers were no longer in classrooms teaching. They had to make adjustments to be able to actually reach the kids online, which meant that they were looking in a different way with different eyes at their students as their students were learning this curriculum. We had to make sure that teachers still could identify any exploitation or abuse that was happening. Our second program is called the Employ Plus Empower program, and this is our prevention through employment. We want to make sure that survivors aren't re-exploited and that they have a sustainable job, that they are financially secure, and that they can thrive. Survivor voices are incredibly important in this movement, and I believe strongly that when we listen to survivors, we actually will create prevention programs and initiatives that do exactly what we need to do to prevent this crime.
Welcome back to World Sport. When we get punished for transitioning, we also get punished for having to go through puberty. Those are the words of retired transgender rugby player Caroline Lait after International Rugby League's decision to exclude transgender women from competition. That came the day after swimming governing body FINA banned them from elite races if they have gone through male puberty. Now, the IRL has said it has considered, quote, relevant developments in world sport in coming to its decision to ban male to female players until it has completed research on its final inclusion policy. Now, transgender women have already been banned from playing at the elite level of rugby union by World Rugby. Now, for more, earlier our Amanda Davis spoke with Caroline Lait herself, a former player and now journalist and activist for transgender athletes.
We have been doubly punished by two different sports, so double. And yeah, it hasn't been easy. It's been quite tough riding probably an uncontrollable wave if you're a transgender person, because we feel a little bit like we're not worthy. And yeah, I think, you know, and we still have this, some people see us as sinners and we've done the wrong thing, and that's by simply being our authentic self. So sometimes I think that's a little bit tough for someone who is transgender, and even those people that are probably still haven't transitioned at this stage, because this rhetoric, I suppose, is coming out, is making it hard for people to transition. And doubling down on that, I think.
What would you say is the overriding feeling within the community? Is it anger? Is it disappointment? Is it fear? Is it resignation?
Yeah, look, I think it's a combination of all those factors, Amanda. But I don't think it's hopelessness. I think there is some hope there. And here in Australia, we have some of the CEOs who are leading the way. And I actually had conversations today with some of our leading CEOs of some of our top sports. And, you know, that was organised through Tracy Holmes and an organisation which is really good. And we had, as I said, Kieran Perkins was there. There was Andrew Abdo from the National Rugby League, Craig Tiley from Tennis Australia. There was, I think there is hope there, but I think we have to sort of get through those feelings of anger and disappointment and resignation and all that, and then we can sort of start to think of a brighter future. And just the fact that there was a transgender person such as myself in the room, and there was an endocrinologist in Dr. Ada Chung talking. Tracy Holmes is a great ABC journalist. She has a Ticket podcast. advocating for us, and I think that really sort of humanises us in front of these CEOs and people. So yeah, and that's great.
When you say hope of what? Is that a hope that some of these decisions will be overturned, or is it that other federations won't follow suit?
Look, I think a bit of both, and I think when common sense prevails, I think hopefully like FINA and International Rugby League. Well, International Rugby League actually isn't a ban playing. It's only a ban playing at international level. But for swimming, it's pretty much if you transition before you're 12. Sorry, my dog is really going off out there. But if he's not behaving, I'm sorry about that. But if you like, it's just yeah, there's a hope that they will maybe reverse or with FINA change their decision in the future. And then there's a hope that other sports may come on board and include us. And look, here in Australia, we have Cricket Australia and a lot of other sporting bodies, Hockey Australia, Touch Football Australia, and they're all on board with the Pride Index in sport. So they already have inclusive guidelines in sport. And no one's saying that it should be what I'm saying is it should be a case-by-case basis, and it shouldn't be a blanket ban or a blanket, yes, you can play, especially at the elite level. I think there needs to be guidelines, there needs to be rules, and there needs to be time factor things for transgender women to play, especially at that elite level. I think community level, everyone should be able to play sport because that's a universal human right issue.
There's been a huge, if somewhat overdue, development ahead of this women's the women's PGA Championship, with the announcement that the prize purse for the tournament is doubling from $4.5 million to $9 million. And with more, here's our latest Rolex Minute.
Congressional Country Club in Maryland hosts the KPMG Women's PGA Championship starting this Thursday. The historic venue has hosted 5 major championships, but this will be the first since a complete redesign of the famed Blue Course that took nearly 2 years. Wider fairways and 40 new bunkers welcome the star-studded field. 43 of the world's top 50 will have to display precision and poise to land their name in the history books. Defending champion and world number 2 Nelly Korda leads the way after hitting an impressive 19 under in 2021. Among her challengers is Brooke Henderson. The Canadian became the youngest winner of the event in 2016 at just 18. And in-form Lydia Ko, who is looking for her 3rd major title in Bethesda.
This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source.
What in the world is going on in Texas right now?
A ruby red state gets redder.
Money is what's pushing Texas to the far right.
Why?
Is this about being conservative or is it about control?
CNN investigates deep in the pockets of Texas. Saturday on CNN.
We try to be global and we try to be smart. And we try very hard to get both of those every week. What I want to hear are authentic voices of people who are passionate or intelligent about a subject, who will make you smarter, move you emotionally, who will kind of challenge your mind or move your heart. And that's the consistency that we try to get at.
Fareed Zakaria, GPS, Sundays on CNN.
Welcome back. Well, Serena Williams winning again on Wednesday in her 2nd match back since being out nearly a full year with a leg injury. The 40-year-old is now on to the doubles semifinals at Eastbourne with her partner Tunisia's Ons Jabeur. This is a tune-up for Serena ahead of Wimbledon, where she's going to be hoping to make a deep run in the singles draw. And earlier, our Amanda Davis spoke to CNN tennis contributor Ben Rothenberg about Serena's road back to Wimbledon.
She said that she quit training pretty cold turkey. She said after she pulled out the U.S. Open with a continuing injury, she said she stopped working out for a while, but always tried to say semi-fit because you never know when you're going to enter Wimbledon, is what she said. It's a very relatable statement for all of us who stop working out. You never know when Wimbledon might come around. So we had real doubts that she was playing, and she didn't enter Wimbledon at the general entry cutoff. She got a late wild card into the